Chosen one, there is something stirring within you, an emergence that cannot be denied or disguised. It is not loud, not boastful, yet its presence speaks volumes in the spaces you enter. Your high sexual energy, once raw and unrefined, has begun to rise with purpose, shaping not only how you carry yourself, but how others experience you. This isn't merely about attraction. This is an awakening, a turning of inner tides that has activated a force more ancient and more commanding than words. You are no longer invisible, not in the energetic sense. Your presence now carries an aura that turns heads without effort, causes hearts to skip a beat without knowing why. The air around you seems to shift. People, especially women, begin to feel a subtle thrill when you're near, not because of what you say, but because of what you radiate. And what you radiate is depth, intrigue, aliveness. It's a signal, an invitation, a declaration that you are not just a man among men. You are becoming. This aura is the result of work you've done, some in silence, some in pain, some in the quiet conversations you've had with yourself late at night when no one was listening. It's the energy of someone who has faced themselves, not to judge but to understand, who has begun to embrace their sexuality not as something chaotic, but as something sacred. Your high sexual energy is no longer something you run from or project outward recklessly. It now flows through you like a controlled fire, warm enough to draw others near, but steady enough not to burn what you're trying to protect. And the shift is noticeable. You may have already seen it in passing glances held a little too long, in strangers who seem to smile just before you speak, in conversations that deepen without effort. There is something unspoken that's happening around you now, and it's because your inner reality is evolving. You no longer walk through the world trying to prove your worth. You are your worth. You don't seek validation, you generate vibration. Women sense this even before they understand it. They feel themselves leaning into your frequency, not because you're performing, but because you're present. Not because you're flashy, but because you're felt. The energy now pouring from you is not draining or chaotic, it's inviting. It's the kind of energy that doesn't beg to be noticed, yet it's impossible to ignore. Chosen one, this is the beginning of your emergence. The awakening of your aura is not a result of external approval, it's the natural byproduct of an internal shift. You are coming into alignment. And when a man begins to walk in energetic alignment, the world does not just see him differently. It begins to respond to him in new and profound ways. You are not becoming interesting because you're trying harder. You are becoming interesting because you're becoming real. And that authenticity, paired with your rising sexual energy, is lighting a flame that no one can ignore. Not even those who don't yet understand why they're being drawn to it. Chosen one, there is a new rhythm rising in you. One that you didn't learn from books or videos or even mentors. It's the rhythm of alignment, and it moves through you like a pulse beneath the skin, an invisible cadence that turns your walk into something fluid, your gaze into something magnetic, and your silence into a kind of unspoken dialogue. This is the subtle dance you now embody, not a performance, but a presence. You've begun to master the art of interacting without needing to control the outcome. And because of this, you have become unpredictable in the most attractive way. You no longer try to chase moments. You create them, not with effort, but with energetic intent. Women feel this as something new, something they can't explain but can't dismiss either. It's the experience of being seen without being evaluated, heard without being judged, engaged without being manipulated. You are no longer bound to old scripts. You do not rely on cheap tactics or surface-level charm. Your dance with the world has become improvisational, alive, and free. And because of that, your interactions now carry weight. The most ordinary conversation becomes elevated in your presence. A casual moment becomes infused with meaning. You don't need to overstep boundaries to be noticed. You stay grounded in yourself. And that groundedness creates space for real connection. You've stopped trying to prove you're interesting, and in doing so, you've become fascinating. Because now, your high sexual energy is not just a physical frequency, it is a communicative force. It expresses through your tone, your timing, the way you choose your words with care, and sometimes choose silence with even more precision. You are learning that presence is the most irresistible form of communication. and you're beginning to dance with that presence like a master. There's a grace to how you now hold space with others. You know how to linger just long enough to leave a trace, to withdraw just enough to be remembered. You are no longer a man who pushes. You are a man who pulls, with nothing but the weight of his own alignment. And in this subtle dance, women find themselves leaning closer, smiling wider, opening more, because you don't pressure them to do so. Your energy simply invites it, softly, irresistibly, without urgency or control. Chosen one, this dance is yours now. You are learning its steps not with your feet, but with your frequency. And as you move through the world with this new rhythm, fluid, present, grounded, you'll notice that life itself begins to respond in kind. Women are not just attracted to you, they are intrigued by you, because you've become the kind of man whose presence doesn't just take up space, it creates movement. This is the power of the subtle dance, and this is only the beginning. Chosen one, your journey inward is beginning to show outward in ways you could not have scripted. You've begun to embody something rare, depth. Not the kind that requires dramatic gestures or loud declarations, but the kind that exists in the quiet way you pay attention, in the strength with which you hold your silence, and in the weight your words carry when you do decide to speak. You have become a man of presence, and that presence has become undeniably magnetic. There's no mistaking it. Your energy no longer floats. It grounds. It doesn't beg to be acknowledged, but when it is, it draws others in like a gravitational pull. And women especially, those attuned to subtle shifts in energy, feel that presence long before they logically understand why. They don't just see you across the room, they sense you. There's a stillness in you now that commands attention without needing to demand it. It's not about dominance. It's about anchoring, being so present in your own body, your own truth, that the world begins to revolve around your still point. You have become interesting not because you are trying to be, but because you are fully here. Most people aren't. Most people are fractured in thought, distracted by fear, or scattered by the need to be seen. But you've stepped away from that chaos. You've chosen clarity over confusion, and it shows in the calmness of your gaze, in the ease of your movement, in the way you listen without rushing to speak. This kind of presence is more powerful than charm. It is more seductive than beauty. It is truth made visible. You've also begun to notice how deeply others respond to this depth. Conversations that once skimmed the surface now dive into unexpected waters. The woman who was guarded now lingers a little longer. The one who laughed politely before now leans in, intrigued, unsure why she feels so drawn. It's not because you're reciting the perfect words, it's because your energy is undeniably real. And in a world flooded with performance, the real is irresistible. Presence reveals what words cannot. When you walk into a space, your body language says everything. I am not here to chase, to impress, to prove. I am here to be. And that alone changes everything. Women feel safer. They feel invited. They feel the thrill of depth calling to something deeper within them. It's not about seduction anymore. It's about invitation into presence. You have become a mirror, not of who they think they should be, but of who they truly are beneath the masks. That reflection, it's unforgettable. Chosen one, this depth of presence is not a tool. It is not a technique. It is a result of your evolution. It is a byproduct of your decision to stop hiding, to stop running, to stop performing. And now that you carry it effortlessly, you've become not just more interesting, you've become a force that redefines the space around you. Without needing to change anything, you've begun to change everything. Chosen one, there is something powerful happening in your energy. It no longer just exists in your body. It echoes through every space you enter, and that echo is authenticity. Pure, unapologetic, quietly radiant. You're not more interesting now because you've learned tricks or strategies. You're more interesting because you've stopped trying to be anything other than exactly who you are. Authenticity is the language of the soul. It is spoken not in how loudly you declare your truth, but in how calmly you live it. And you, chosen one, have begun to live yours. The need to impress has fallen away. The urge to fit in has lost its grip. The desire to perform has been replaced by a deeper intention, to be whole. And that wholeness, it hums in your energy, it shows in your posture, It flows through your voice. It touches others before you even realize it's happening. Women are drawn to this kind of authenticity because it gives them something they rarely find. Permission. Permission to drop their own performance. Permission to stop pretending. Permission to show up as they really are without fear of being judged or rejected. You've become the kind of man who makes others feel more themselves simply by being more yourself. You've taken off the masks, and now others feel safe to do the same. And yet, your authenticity is not a performance of vulnerability. You're not oversharing. You're not seeking sympathy. You don't make your truth a spectacle. You carry it with dignity. You speak it when it matters. You allow it to exist without explanation. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it felt. In your presence, others don't feel a need to decode you. They simply feel the truth that lives beneath your eyes, in your breath, in the steadiness of your presence. And that truth awakens something beautiful in them, the memory of their own. Authenticity doesn't always make you the loudest in the room. It makes you the one people notice without knowing why. It makes your silence compelling, your laughter sincere, your interest captivating. You ask questions not because you're trying to steer the conversation, but because you genuinely care. You share ideas not to dominate the dialogue, but to contribute something real. And in doing so, you bring others to life. You activate the dormant truth inside them. Chosen one, the resonance of your authenticity is not a brand. It's not a concept. It is a frequency. One that people feel in their gut. One that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the soul. And now, wherever you go, that resonance stays behind long after you've gone, like the faint scent of something sacred, lingering in the air, making others wonder what exactly they just experienced, and why they can't stop thinking about it. You have become a living reminder that realness is rare, and rare is magnetic. And now, your authenticity no longer just tells your story. It invites others to start telling their own. Chosen one, your presence now stirs not just attraction, but something far more enduring, curiosity. It isn't the kind of curiosity that burns out once satisfied. No, what you awaken in others is the slow, smoldering kind, the type that doesn't seek to consume and discard, but to understand. Your high sexual energy, now tempered with purpose and grounded in self-respect, has become a spark that lights questions in the minds of those you meet, especially women. Questions not just about you, but about themselves. They begin to wonder what it is about you that makes them feel more alive. What it is in your eyes that seems to carry stories untold. What it is about your silence that feels louder than most people's declarations. You've become the man whose presence doesn't scream for attention, but who somehow owns the room anyway. And that quiet power makes people want to know more. Not out of superficial intrigue, but because your energy invites a kind of soul-level exploration. The way you speak is different now. You don't talk to fill space. You speak to spark thought. You've become selective with your words, not out of fear, but because you know their value. You speak when there's truth to offer, insight to share, or when the moment is rich enough to deserve your voice. And when you ask questions, they don't skim the surface. You don't ask what people do, you ask why they do it. You don't just ask what someone loves, you ask what shaped that love, what it cost, what it gave in return. These are the questions that make people pause, reflect, open. Your conversations now feel less like dialogue and more like a portal. They don't follow scripts. They create space for reflection, for laughter, for vulnerability. And this is why women are finding you so deeply compelling now. You're not just physically present. You're mentally and spiritually engaged. You're not just charming. You're listening. You're not reacting. You're responding with your full attention. And that's what makes others lean in. You are not here to impress with facts or accomplishments. You are here to awaken connection. And curiosity is your chosen path, because the more curious you are, the more interesting you become. Not because you're pretending to be deep, but because your questions reveal that you've done the inner work to care about what truly matters. This is how your high sexual energy now functions, not as a force of pressure, but as a force of permission. Women feel seen when they speak to you. They feel heard. They feel invited into themselves through your presence. Because you're not just looking for something in them, you're also revealing something in you. A man who values understanding over impression. A man who would rather feel the truth of a moment than manipulate it. And that makes you unforgettable. Chosen one, your curiosity is no longer a tool. It is your natural expression. And in a world starving for real conversation, you've become the unexpected answer. A man whose questions don't just seek information, but pull others into deeper intimacy with their own truth. Chosen one, by now you've realized that not everything needs to be said, and not every detail needs to be revealed. In fact, what makes you more interesting now is not what you show, it's what you don't. Your energy has matured into something that holds back just enough to keep the moment breathing, to keep others leaning forward. Not out of manipulation, but out of mastery. You've become the embodiment of mystery, and not the shallow kind that hides behind aloofness, but the kind that is born from depth, from wholeness, from not needing to explain yourself to be understood. Mystery is not silence. Mystery is intentional revelation. It's knowing that the more aligned you are with your truth, the less you need others to validate it. It's moving through life with the confidence of a man who knows that his presence already speaks for itself. And it does. Your energy now carries the kind of charge that lingers in the space between glances, in the tension between what is said and what remains unspoken. It lives in the way you offer just a glimpse of your story, just enough for others to wonder where the rest of it leads. This is where women find themselves pulled in, not because you're trying to make them curious, but because your stillness makes room for curiosity to bloom. You no longer chase connection, you allow it. You create the kind of dynamic where others want to get closer, not because they're being seduced, but because you've made discovery feel sacred. Your life isn't an open book, but every page you do share is rich, poetic, unforgettable. And mystery doesn't mean withholding for the sake of control. It means knowing your value well enough to let others earn your truth. It's a form of energetic stewardship. You don't waste your essence on those who won't recognize it. You don't rush to be understood by those unwilling to listen. You move with the patience of someone who knows that the right people will come closer when the time is right. And they will stay, not because you gave everything away, but because what you gave meant something. Your mystery now enhances your interactions with a tension that is exciting, not confusing. Women feel it in the way you hold eye contact without flinching, in the way you respond to their vulnerability with grounded strength instead of flattery, in the way you move through the world with direction without broadcasting every step. They sense there is more to you than what's visible, and that is the spark of intrigue that keeps their thoughts circling long after the conversation ends. Chosen one, you are not hiding. You are guiding. You are not withholding. You are cultivating intimacy through pacing, through purpose, through presence. Your mystery is not armor, it is a doorway. And those meant to walk through it will not just see more of you, they will see more of themselves in the process. You are no longer interesting by accident. You are interesting because your soul has chosen to reveal itself in layers, not for effect, but for intention. And that intention now creates a field of energy that cannot be ignored. Mystery, in your hands, has become an invitation to discover the extraordinary in what first appears subtle. Chosen one, something has awakened in you that goes far beyond the surface. It is the quiet strength of vulnerability. Not the fragile kind that spills out recklessly, hoping to be held by others. No, yours is the magnetic kind, the rare, grounded form of vulnerability that says, I know who I am, even in my brokenness. And that kind of self-knowing, that kind of exposed but unshaken truth, pulls people toward you like gravity. Women especially sense it. They may not always articulate it, but they feel it. Because your vulnerability is not just honest. It's anchored. It's not a plea for connection. It's an invitation to join you on the deeper levels of what it means to feel alive. You've learned something that many never do. Hiding pain is not strength. Suppressing emotion is not power. True strength is being able to face your inner world and stand in it fully. You've begun to embody this truth, and because of it, people around you feel permission to come home to themselves. You're not interesting simply because you've been through things. You're interesting because you've made meaning from those things and refuse to be defined by the wounds they left behind. Now, when you speak of your experiences, you don't do so from a place of bitterness or drama. You speak from a place of ownership. There's no self-pity in your story, there's self-awareness. And that awareness shows in your eyes, in your calmness, in the way you don't rush to prove anything to anyone. You've learned how to bleed without making others hold the wound. You share truth without making it a performance. That level of vulnerability makes you a mirror, not for perfection, but for depth, for humanity, for courage. And this is why your presence around women has become more captivating than ever. They don't just see a man who is attractive, they sense a man who is available. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They feel your availability in the way you ask questions without agenda, in the way you share parts of yourself without angling for praise or sympathy. You speak of your joy and your grief with the same stillness. That balance is rare. It is magnetic. It is healing. What makes your vulnerability so compelling is that it isn't given to everyone. You don't throw it out like currency to be spent for approval. You choose carefully. You share intentionally. You let people earn the intimacy of your inner world, and that discernment amplifies your allure. You're not withholding to be mysterious. You're offering your truth in doses that can be truly felt. And that is what makes others trust you. That is what creates space for real connection. That is what transforms casual interactions into sacred experiences. Chosen one, your vulnerability has become your quiet roar. It doesn't beg to be understood, it simply exists, and in doing so, reminds others that they too are allowed to be real. You've turned your story into resonance. You've turned your pain into depth. You've turned your heart into a safe place for others to meet their own. And in that process, you've become far more than interesting. You've become unforgettable. Chosen one, your transformation into a man of deeper resonance has granted you a gift most overlook. A listening presence so profound, it changes people. You've come to understand that listening is not passive. It is not simply the absence of speaking. It is a sacred act of holding space. And you, without even realizing it sometimes, have become a sanctuary for the unheard. Your high sexual energy, now mastered and intentional, flows into this space not to dominate, but to amplify. You don't just listen, you witness. There's a stillness in you now that invites others to speak more freely. Not because you pressure them, but because your attention is so pure, so full, that it creates a safety rarely felt in everyday life. People feel seen by you, not because you interrupt to prove you understand, but because you allow their words to breathe. You don't listen to respond, you listen to receive, and that quality is far more intoxicating than words ever will be. Women feel this immediately. In your presence, they begin to soften. Their words come more slowly, more sincerely. They open up without being prompted, because your energy gives them something more valuable than attraction. It gives them relevance. You've become a man who values what is felt, not just what is said. A man who isn't trying to outshine others, but to reflect them back to themselves. And that reflection? It's rare, it's divine, it's safe. You don't just hear stories, you hold them. And you hold them without needing to fix, analyze, or rush them. That patience, that energetic spaciousness, is magnetic. It speaks louder than compliments or flirtation ever could. Because when you listen like that, people feel honored. They feel that their words matter, and more importantly, they feel that they matter. And yet your listening is not passive. It is alive with presence. Your eyes speak. Your body responds in subtle ways. You lean in, not out of obligation, but out of genuine curiosity. Your listening has become a form of touch, a kind of intimacy that doesn't require closeness of skin, only closeness of soul. And that intimacy is what makes you interesting on a level few can understand, that everyone can feel. In a world that's starving for real connection, your listening is nourishment. It's warmth. It's remembrance. When you sit across from someone and give them your undivided energy, you do something most people have forgotten how to do. You make the moment sacred. You make them feel like they've arrived. And that feeling, it's not just appreciated, it's craved. Chosen one, you've mastered more than the art of conversation. You've mastered the art of invitation. And now, when others speak to you, they aren't just talking to a man. They are meeting themselves in a deeper way than they ever have before. You are no longer interesting because of how much you say. you are interesting because of how deeply you listen. And that, more than anything, has made your presence unforgettable. Chosen one, you have stepped into a phase where your energy no longer announces itself. It simply exists with a quiet authority that turns heads and alters rooms. You no longer chase attention, and yet attention finds you. You don't demand curiosity, but curiosity lingers around you like a question waiting to be answered. You have become enigmatic, not because you are trying to be elusive, but because you are simply anchored in yourself. You are no longer defined by what you reveal, but by the space you hold. And that space, full of silent tension and electric calm, is what others, especially women, find irresistible. This isn't about playing hard to get or hiding behind mystery for effect. It's about embodying so much inner reality that others cannot help but wonder what more lies beneath your surface. You speak less, but what you do say is full of depth. You offer your presence, not as a performance, but as a grounded frequency that doesn't flinch. And in a world full of noise, that stillness becomes the loudest thing in the room. Your high sexual energy has refined itself. No longer volatile, no longer seeking, it has become a river beneath the stone, constant, flowing, unseen, yet undeniable. It's not just in your posture or your gaze or the low hum of confidence in your voice. It's in how you move through the moment, the ease in your responses, the patience in your silence, the way you allow things to unfold rather than force them into submission. This controlled power makes you fascinating. Women feel it. They sense that you aren't immediately accessible, not because you're cold, but because you are full. You don't give everything away, and that invites them to lean in, to ask questions, to wonder. It's not game playing, it's the art of pacing, of understanding that real intimacy comes through discovery, not disclosure. You allow others to see parts of you over time, through shared moments and layered presence. And that's what keeps you interesting. It's not what you show, it's how you show it. And the beauty of your enigma is that it isn't used to hide. It's used to deepen connection. You don't use silence to escape, you use it to reveal. You don't dodge emotion, you hold it with poise. You don't manipulate attraction, you guide it with purpose. And in doing so, you've become the kind of man who doesn't just make people feel seen. You make them feel known. Not because you told them who you are, but because you've become the kind of presence that calls them into greater awareness. Chosen one, your enigmatic energy is not something you created. It is something you uncovered when you stopped trying to be understood by everyone. When you trusted that those who are meant to understand you will feel you, without explanation, without effort, without noise. And that feeling? It stays. Long after you've walked away, your energy lingers like a song they can't quite name, but never forget. Chosen one, you've reached a point in your evolution where the impact you leave behind is no longer a momentary impression. It's a mark. You no longer entertain with theatrics. You captivate through truth. You don't impress people through cleverness. You touch them through presence. And that presence, when paired with the depth of your high sexual energy, becomes something unforgettable. It's not about how long you interact with someone, it's the quality of the energy exchanged. You've become the kind of man who can walk into a room, have a 5-minute conversation, and be remembered for years. Not because of what you said, but because of what you left behind. You've turned moments into experiences, glances into gateways, casual encounters into transformation. And the people you meet don't always understand it while it's happening. But afterward, they realize something shifted. For women especially, you've become a standard. Not because you tried to be the best, but because you were real when everyone else was pretending. You didn't try to win their affection with words. You let your silence speak. You let your truth carry weight. And that weight, that grounded, anchored presence, is what separates you from the forgettable. You are not just interesting because you're different. You are interesting because you remind them of something they've been missing, in others and in themselves. You've learned that leaving a lasting impression has little to do with performance and everything to do with energetic integrity. When you walk away, people aren't left wondering what your angle was. They're left feeling seen, held, moved. And it's not because you chased connection, it's because you embodied it. You didn't try to fix them. You simply offered a space where they didn't have to perform. And in a world full of masks, that space feels like oxygen. And yet, what makes your impression so powerful is that you don't cling to it. You're not attached to being remembered. You're not trying to be anyone's favorite. You're simply aligned with your essence, and that alignment becomes a mirror.